Okay, can you hear me? Here we go again. Can anybody hear me? Oh, you can hear me. Okay, good. Okay, so the Mishnah says like this. Let's read through the Mishnah, translate the Mishnah, and then try to understand what exactly this Mishnah is doing here. So the Mishnah says that al tevakesh gedula la'atzmucha, that a person should not seek greatness for themselves, v'al tachmod kavod, nor should a person desire honor, yoser min limudecha aseh, more than what you understand, than what you know, you should do, v'al tis'ave l'shulchanam shamalachim, and you should not desire the shulchan, the table of the kings, sheshulchancha gadol mishulchanam, because your table is bigger than their table, v'chisrecha gadol mikisram, and your crown is greater than their crown. V'ne'eman hu ba'al melachtecha, and your employer is faithful, trustworthy, sheyishalem l'cha schar pulasecha, that he is going to pay back for you, he is going to pay you the reward of your efforts. Now, the biggest problem with that Mishnah is, first of all, that all of these ideas are sort of borrowed from other places in Pirkei Avos. That we've really, and I'm going to talk about in detail in a few minutes, but we've talked about this in other places, not just, this is not new ideas. Why is it repeating itself? Second problem, this section of the Mishnah that we're in, that we've spoken about many times, this chapter is called the chapter of Kinyan HaTorah. It's the chapter of the acquisition of Torah. What? Even if these are new ideas, what are they doing here? If you remember of the previous Mishnayos in this chapter, the beautiful Mishnayos in this chapter, that we started off by saying that Rabbi Meir says anybody who learns Torah for the right reasons, this is what he gets. And it gives a whole huge laundry list of the advantages that comes to a person's life because they have Torah. The second Mishnah, we talked about how there is a voice that comes every single day, a voice of condemnation when we realize that we have let go something really precious and special, and that voice indicts us every single day from Mount Sinai. Okay, then the third Mishnah, where we talked about how precious Torah is, that if somebody teaches you one little bit of Torah, then that person is already a respected person. That person in your eyes is a valuable person as a part of your life. And then last week's Mishnah, where we talked about how you sometimes have to give up a little bit to gain, all of that is about acquiring Torah. How is this about acquiring Torah? What in the world does this Mishnah have to do with the concept of the kinyan, of the acquisition of Torah? And what's the connection between all these pieces of the Mishnah? Okay, so I think that the place to start is the understanding that the words that we ended off the previous Mishnah with was that im ata osakein, if you do this, that means if you give up a little bit in order to gain a lot. We talked about eating your bread with salt and sleeping on the floor and drinking a little bit of water. That if you give up in order to be able to gain, then ashrecha v'tovlach, we said, that it is you're fortunate, praiseworthy, v'tovlach, and it's good for you. And then the Mishnah said ashrecha ba'olam hazeh, that is good for you, it's praiseworthy for you in this world, v'tovlach le'olam haba. Now, then it's going to be good for you in the world to come. Now, those are pretty hefty statements. They're hefty statements and they're heady statements. Notice to know that when you're engaged in Torah, and that when you're really working in Torah, when you're starving for Torah, You're looking to every place you can to be able to learn Torah. You're grabbing whatever you can. You're giving up parts of your material existence in order to be able to excel in Torah. Ashrecha v'tov lach. That's amazing. Well, if I keep telling you you're amazing, eventually it goes to your head. It's an important thing to tell a person that they're really incredible. The things you do are awesome. But if you just keep telling that to a person, so then it could easily go to the head of a person, and it could easily turn a person into what we call a Baal Gaiva, into a haughty human being. And therefore the Mishnah says that don't break your arm patting yourself on your back. Al tivakesh gedula la'atzmacha. Don't expect to see greatness for yourself. You should expect to see greatness by learning Torah, by acquiring Torah, by living a life of Torah. Living a life of Torah, as we're going to learn in a few minutes, living a life of Torah is a spectacular existence. Sometimes it looks like it's running against the world. It looks like, the world is standing in one place, you're standing in a different place. But at the end of the day, living a life of Torah and living with the values of the Torah and living with the mitzvos and the lifestyle of the Torah, it is an incredible existence, an existence that is filled with meaning every single minute of the day. But it's not about you. It's not about the fact that your life is enhanced and that your life is better. It's about the fact that God exists in the world. Every mitzvah you do, you bring the light of God into the world. Every word of Torah that you learn, you bring the light of God into the world. Every chesed that you do for another human being, you're bringing the light of God into the world. The very same act of chesed, the very same act of goodness could be something that is dark or it could be something that is light. If it's about you and about your gains and about the way you feel and about, your kumbaya and your spirituality and if it's all about you, so then it's darkness. But when it's all about bringing God into the world, so then it's all about light. My son and I do these podcasts, and we haven't put out a new one in a while, but we taped a bunch of them and we have them ready. I think maybe this week they're going to go out. But we talked about this concept of kiruv rechokim, which in the world of blogging, in the world of podcasting, it now seems to be a big issue. Kiruv rechokim is like outreach, reaching out to others, whether it's a mitzvah, whether it's not a mitzvah, and so we had this whole discussion about it. But one of the things that we talked about was that if a person feels that they're here to serve God, and that the way they serve God through the Torah and through mitzvahs is an incredible way, so then a person can't hold themselves back from wanting to spread that to other people. You have a friend who is an awesome person. You want everybody to meet that person. You run around, tell me, hey, this guy's really great. You should meet him. You try to introduce him to everybody because you're proud of that person. If we love God and we really have a relationship with God, so then we feel that very strongly that all we want to do is to introduce him into the world. Every kindness I do, every goodness that I do, introduces God and brings him into the world. The Mishnah here has to remind us, Al tivakesh gedula la'atzmacha. This is not about you. The previous four Mishnayos, which talked about the awesomeness of Torah, it's not about an exercise program of how to make yourself healthy. It's not about some kind of program of how to make yourself happy by, if you do this and this and this and this, a 5-step program. It's about how do you bring God into the world. And therefore, a reminder, before we get on to the next Mishnah, which is going to take us probably about a year. The next Mishnah, we'll talk about that another time. But before we get on to the next Mishnah, which is the particular things that you need to actually grow in Torah, So, al tevakesh gedula atzmacha, please make sure that you align this correctly and that you know exactly why you're doing this. It's not about you, but it's really about bringing the Rebbeinu Shalom into the world. What happens when you bring God into the world? You ever meet a person like that? That works for God? Not an obnoxious person, not a person that says, whatever, they try to throw stuff in your face, but a person who really sincerely feels like they're working for God. They're teaching God's Torah. They're spreading God's Torah. It's not about themselves, it's about God. It's about getting people to build a relationship with God. It's really just making the introduction. A person who actually lives like that, that person is a person who will garner a tremendous amount of honor. People will come flocking to that person with kavod, with honor. Why is that? See, when you're able to give honor to somebody else, you smell different. In other words, a person who does nice things, that's great. A person's a good person, it's a nice thing. But a person who is able to deflect the honor that could be coming to themselves and to deflect it onto somebody else, that's real humility. A lot of times a person will get accolades and they'll say, oh no, it wasn't me. It was really the other person. Baloney, man. You want to sound humble. So you're saying, oh, it wasn't really me. It was really the other guy. If you don't believe that, if they would have said, we want to give honor to the other guy, you would have gotten pissed off. You would have said, hey, wait a second. What about me? Yes, I did all the work. Nobody even recognized me. So it's not a sincere thing. When it's a sincere thing that you really try to deflect that honor and give that honor to somebody else, that smells incredible. It looks incredible. It makes an incredible impression. You know what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah? The nations of the world were actually very negative, and they actually thought very negatively of God. Because listen to the commandments that they heard. The first commandment that they heard was, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. They said to themselves, whoa, this God thing is an egomaniac. Then God says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Holy cow, he's like dripping in it. Then, thou shalt not take my name in vain. Don't wasteth my name. Holy cow, this God's really into himself. And then he says, once every week, remember how I created this world. 6 days I work, and the seventh day I rested, and therefore you have to rest on the Sabbath also, and you have to remember me. So the nations of the world are listening to this, and they're saying to themselves, this is a sick God. This is a God who's just an egomaniac. And then they heard the fifth commandment. Honor your father and your mother. And they were blown away. Because they saw God being mechalek kavod, giving honor to someone else. And he was comfortable with it. God says, by the way, give honor to your parents. Because ultimately, who brought you into this world? Your parents brought you into this world. And therefore, kabedis avicha v'yasimecha. The fact that God was able to take the kavod that was due him and to be able to spread that honor to somebody else. Don't give kavod just to me. Give kavod to the ones who brought you into this world. Give kavod to your parents. Means that God is comfortable with himself. Means that God is comfortable with giving kavod to others. A lot of times, a person is dangerously self-conscious, and it's difficult for them to be able to give kavod to other people because they feel if they give kavod to others, it's going to take away from their honor. And what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us is that that's not true. The most honorable thing in the world, and the thing that people appreciate the most in the world, is that kind of humility that makes room and space for someone and something else. God himself did it in the fifth of the 10 Commandments, which changed the attitude of the nations of the world. And he demands that of us also. And the author of the Mishnah is saying to us, Al tivakesh gedula atzmacha, don't just work for yourself. You have to realize and make it known that you're working for God. And therefore, vi al tachmod kavod, don't hold on to all the kavod to yourself. Look at how great I am. Look how religious I am. Look at how much I work. Look at how I'm improving myself. Look at what kind of better person I'm becoming. No, don't do that. Make sure that the kavod that you're giving is that you're giving it to God. Because when you give that kavod to God, so then naturally kavod is going to come to you. But when you try to hold it on for yourself, when you try to put the spotlight on you, so then nothing good comes of that. And then the Mishnah continues. And here's where we have a little bit of a big problem, which is going to cause us to have to reword this Mishnah. Yoser milimudecha asay. Practice more than you learn. You know, if any one of you were to come to Eretz Yisrael now, I'm assuming that none of you have learnt the laws of Shemitah, the detailed laws of Shemitah of the seventh year, that on the seventh year we have to let the land lie fallow. What the extent of that is, what the parameters of that is. But I'm expecting of you to be absolutely punctilious and precise in your observance of Shemitah from the day you land in Israel. Do you understand what I just said? You have no idea what the laws of Shemitah are. We're in a Shemitah year now. You have no idea what the laws of Shemitah are. You get into Israel, and this Mishnah tells you, practice more than you learn. So you have to practice the laws of Shemitah even though you've never heard of them. Does that make any sense? There's no logic to that. How can you keep more than you learn? How is that possible? So we actually learned this before in the sense that we had a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that said that that any person whose actions were greater than their wisdom. And we discussed that issue over there. And we said, how could it possibly be that you do more than you know? You can't do more than you know. You physically can't do that. If you don't know it, you can't do it. If you don't know it exists, you can't do it. Once you find out about it, that's something else. But you can't do something you don't know about. So the way we explained it over there is that we said that you have to commit yourself to doing more than what you know now. In other words, you have to identify that you don't know everything. I know a little bit of Hilchos Shabbos, I know a little bit of the laws of Kashrus, I know a little bit of the laws of Brachos, but I know that I don't know everything. And therefore I'm committed to this knowledge that there is plenty out there that I don't know. And that as soon as I find it out, as soon as it becomes known to me, so then I'm going to start keeping it. Now, in that way, it's considered like I'm doing it already. And that's what the Mishnah is saying. That's what that Mishnah was saying to me. What that Mishnah was saying when it said, Masa merub mechachmaso, how do you have a person whose actions are greater than his knowledge? It's a person whose actions are greater than the knowledge that he has now, but he's committed to knowing more so that he can then keep whatever he finds out. And he's committed to keep whatever he finds out. That person is called, that will endure, that knowledge will endure. Okay, but we can't explain that over here. We can't say that the words over here are saying, Yoser milimudecha asay, more than what you know you should do, means that you should commit yourself to what you don't know, because that's not what it's saying. What it's saying over here is clearly that when you don't know it, it's not just masa merub mechachmaso. Here it's talking about milimudecha, from things that you've learned. From more than what you've learned, you should know. You can't. It's not possible. And again, I can't explain it by saying that even though I don't know it yet, I'm going to know it, and therefore it's as if I'm doing it now, because the words are not allowing us to do that. The Medrash Shmuel, one of the commentaries on Pirkei Avos, says a fascinating thing. The Medrash Shmuel says that what it means is that something that you're in doubt about, something that you're not sure about, so then Yoser milimudecha asay, more than what you know about it, you should do to the strict side. In other words, that what the Mishnah is telling me, according to the Medrash Shmuel, is that if you've learned something, and let's say you're not clear, some issue in Shabbos, or some issue in brachos, some issue in davening, you're not clear, and there is a strict way to do it and a lenient way to do it, then yoser milimudecha, then to go more than what you know, then I say do it that way, meaning go to the strict side. I have a hard time with a mandate to always be strict. Now, we know when you have a doubt in a biblical law, then we go to the strict side. When you have a doubt in a rabbinical law, we go to the lenient side. I have a hard time with a mandate, thinking that there is a mandate that says every time, all the time, whenever you're in doubt, always go to the strict side. It's not who we are. We don't go to the strict side to be strict. We go to the strict side when we might be making a mistake in a biblical commandment. Therefore, take the strict road so that you don't blow a biblical commandment. But that's just in a specific circumstance. It's not a general mandate, and it's certainly not some kind of ethical statement. So I don't think that that's what the Mishnah is saying. So we have to figure out, what is this Mishnah saying to me when it says Yoser milimudecha, more than what you've learned, that's what you have to do. Now, I also have to wonder why the Mishnah would say this, because if you remember, this is about Kinyan Torah. This chapter is about acquiring Torah, not about doing mitzvos. It's not about being frum. It's about acquiring a place in Torah. What does this have to do about acquiring a place in Torah? Okay. So I think like this. I think we're forced a little bit to look at this Mishnah in a little bit of a different light, and that we have to read it this way. You can follow me in the text, back in the beginning of the text. Al tivakesh gedula la'atzmecha. Don't look, like we explained before, don't look at yourself as great. In other words, don't look at yourself as being the object of all of this. V'al tachmod kavod yoser milimudecha. If you're looking at the text, you'll see that I put the comma, I took it away from the word kavod, and I put the comma after the word limudecha. So al tivakesh gedula la'atzmecha v'al tachmod kavod yoser milimudecha. Asay. So the comma was on the word after the word milumadecha. So now the word asay goes on to the next phrase. Asay v'al tis'ave lekisram. Do and don't desire, don't yearn after their shulchan and their crown of the malachim. Okay, so what does this mean? So what it means like this: don't seek the greatness for your own needs, but rather it's all about kavod HaTorah. It's all about honor of the Torah. And that everything you're doing and that everything that we are living, we're living to bring kavod to Hashem and to bring kavod to His Torah. Even for the needs of the Torah, you shouldn't seek kavod more than what you've learned. And what that means is more than, even if you're looking for kavod Torah, you want people to honor the Torah, but it has to be consistent with who you are and what you've accomplished. It can't be more than what would normally be coming to you with what you've learned up until now. In other words, if you want people to honor your Torah, you want people to give kavod to the Torah, So then you can't expect to get, and the Torah should get that kind of kavod, if your presentation of it is a sparse presentation. If your presentation is a poor presentation of the Torah and a representation of the Torah, you can't expect that people are going to look at it and go, wow, that's like amazing. Okay, it's nice, it's beautiful, it's good, but you're not going to have the kind of impact that you would like to have, because it's going to be consistent with what you've learned. Al tachmod kavod yosem milimudecha. In other words, don't expect just because you're a little bit better than what you were in the past, you're a little bit stronger of a person than what you used to be, that people are going to look at that and go, oh, I want to grab onto Torah. I want to be like that also. It's not going to have that kind of effect. You have to recognize that the effect you're going to have on the world is going to be consistent with the level that you've achieved in your own personal learning and in your own personal growth within Torah. And if that's the case, so then you have to, that's a motivator. In other words, what the Mishnah is saying to me is that the al tachmod kavod yoser milimudecha, you can't expect people to be more inspired than you are. You can't expect that your level of inspiration is going to be such that you're going to be able to ignite people and to turn them on and to really push them forward. You have to be that way. And the more you're that way, so then you can expect the more people are going to grab that way. A lot of times with our children, we're worried that why our children aren't learning from us. Because why aren't they inspired from us? Why aren't they getting this message from us? So there is one good answer, which is because they don't want to. They've made a decision and they don't want to, and it doesn't really matter what we do. Okay. But then there's the heart of hearts decision, the heart of hearts understanding. And the heart of hearts understanding is that maybe I'm not inspired enough. Maybe my level of inspiration is not on the level and on the strength that it could actually be inspiring somebody else. Oh, my kids love me. My kids want to follow some of the things that I do, but not necessarily this, because maybe this is not illuminated to the degree that it should be illuminated. And the Mishnah is saying, Al tavakesh gedula la'atzmucha v'al tachmod kavod. Don't look for kavod, and not in a bad way. In other words, don't look for somebody to look at you and say, wow. That's what kavod is, right? V'al tachmod kavod. Nobody's going to say, wow, yoser milimudecha, more than what you know and do. No, if your level is low, the warmth that's coming out of that is minimal. It will have an effect, but a very minimal effect. And the Mishnah is teaching me that if you want to turn the world on, then you need to ignite your soul. And once your soul is ignited, so then it has the ability to be able to ignite others. Okay. Then the Mishnah tells me, V'al tis'ave l'shulchanam shamalachim. I think this is very important. In English it says that don't yearn for the table of kings. What do you think that means? For your table is greater than their table. Your crown is greater than their crown. We have an unfortunate thing that we do. That we compare ourselves to the world. And we really have one eye on Torah and mitzvos, and we have one eye on the world. And that, as much as we enjoy the lifestyle of Torah and mitzvos, but when we look at the lifestyle that people are living without any rules, the lifestyle that people live without any boundaries, the lifestyle that people live without anything that tells them, that dictates to them, no, you can't do this, there's a certain attraction to that. That's some of the reason that the flame or the illumination that comes from us is not as bright as it could be. Because there's sometimes a little bit of envy, of living without any kind of rules. I could go anywhere, anytime, eat anything, say anything, do anything. I can follow my own moral compass. I don't have to follow any other moral compass. I can set my limits and I can set my boundaries. And there's a certain desire to that. And when that takes over, when that gets involved, that gets inside of us, that makes it, that really dampens the fire that's coming from inside of us. I love Shabbos, as long as it doesn't get in the way of other things. Oh, I just love learning Torah, as long as it doesn't get in the way of life. That doesn't allow that internal flame to really burn so brightly. So the Mishnah is saying to us that al tis'av l'shulchanim shamalachim, don't keep your eyes on the prize, on the outside prize. Don't keep your eyes on the lifestyle of the non-Jews, of those that are not connected to God and to Torah. Don't keep your eyes on that, because you need to know, you need to be proud of what you have. You need to know that your shulchan, your table, what you have in front of you is greater than theirs. The crown that comes on your head because of living this kind of lifestyle, the royalty that you are when you live a life of chesed, a life of kindness, a life of midos, a life of character development, a life of constantly thinking about living purposefully and living meaningfully, what comes to you from that is much greater than what they can receive. They can get a new boat and they can get a new house, but that's all. But you can have Chai Olam Hazeh, life in this world, and Chai Olam Haba, life in the next world. You can have something much more meaningful. You can have something much more everlasting. And that's what we have to feel, a sense of pride. Baruch shebachar banu. Blessed is God who has chosen us. Mikol ha'amim. Rabbi, say this on Yontif in our davening. Ata bechartanu mikol ha'amim. You have chosen us from all the nations. We say this bracha when we approach Torah. We say this sentiment all the time. Baruch Elokeinu shebranu lichvaydai. V'nosan lanu teres emes. And He's given us the beautiful Torah. We have to feel a sense of pride. How proud I am to be able to have this lifestyle. How proud I am to be able to have this set of guidelines. How proud I am to be able to be a part of this nation. The mission is just reminding us that if you want to really acquire Torah, you want to fly in Torah, you want to burn in Torah, so then there has to be a sense of pride in Torah. And you have to recognize a lot of times, there's what seems to be certain deprivations that come with Torah. A lot of times, a person can't get certain jobs because they keep mitzvahs. A lot of times, a person can't do certain things because they keep mitzvahs. You want to go on a cruise. The cruise leaves on Saturday and it lands on Saturday. Shkoyach, happy birthday, you can't go. There are certain things in this world, the certain baseball leagues, right? They play only on Saturday. Great, closed off to you. Can't have it. So there's a certain sense of, wait, but I'm keeping mitzvahs and now there are doors that are closing to me. So just as a final conclusion to the Mishnah tells us that you have to, He's trustworthy, your employer, that He's going to pay you the reward of your labor, even when you see that sometimes it's difficult. You see, sometimes it presents a certain hardship. No, that's only the way it looks on the outside. Every bit of energy that you put into this, every bit of effort that you put into this, you're going to be rewarded for it. Even if that on the outside it looks like it's a difficulty, you don't have to worry. Because what you're doing is amazing, what you're doing is right and good, and therefore there could only be advantage that comes out of the end, and it can't be something that's going to cause you a disadvantage. And that's what the Mishnah is telling us. The theme of this Mishnah is that we have to remember, in order to acquire Torah, the goal of what we're trying to do has to be clear to us, and that is to bring God's light into the world. And when we're doing that without regret and remorse, when we're doing that with full throttle, then the light of God is going to illuminate us, and it's going to make it that we are going to be able to, we're going to receive kavod, we're going to get honor, but not because of us, but because we're doing this lishma, for the sake of bringing God into the world. And when you do that for the sake of bringing God into the world, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. When a little bit of you gets mixed into it, it sullies it, it darkens it. But when it's all about God, and it's all just about bringing his light into the world, that is stunning, inspirational, something that can pass on to others, something that can lift up other people. And even when the going gets a little rough, recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching everything, and that the effort that you're putting in, that's going to yield an incredible, and the effort itself is going to yield an incredible amount of light. Okay. That's tonight's Mishnah. Next week we're going to start on a very, very beautiful study of the 48 ways of wisdom. It's going to take a long time. Some of them we do one a week, sometimes 2 or 3 a week, but it's all about midos. It's all about character and character development, and it's really a stunning section of the Mishnah. So in Yetz Hashem next week we start on it's one Mishnah, but it's a very intense study called the 48 Ways of Wisdom. Okay, everybody should have a good night and a good week.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.